What is up, everybody? The young Hylian lad here. It's been a while since I've done an actual unboxing video, so figured I'd make one today to show you a new project I'm going to be working on. This is the Experimental Pi PiBoy DMG Raspberry Pi case. This is essentially a Game Boy looking shell that houses the Raspberry Pi and allows you to play emulators from the original Atari series all the way up until the Nintendo 64 and even Dreamcast era. And as you're about to see, it's designed after the original Game Boy. Same size and shape, but they did add additional buttons and an analog joystick there, which I'll show you momentarily. Now, I actually ordered a Raspberry Pi 4 from CanaKit. However, due to the global state of affairs and the supply chain shortage, I won't be seeing that for another month. So in the meantime, I'm going to be building this and assembling it with a Raspberry Pi 3. And before I actually assemble everything, I'm going to put some links in the description. But you are going to want a micro SD card for your Raspberry Pi running the RetroPie OS. And Experimental Pi has that right on their website with a quick tutorial video on how to flash that. Very straightforward. I'll include that in the description since I've already done that. But for now, let's get this guy opened. Alright, there's the shell itself. Oh my god, I love this already. And again, this is built and designed after the very original Game Boy, the Fat Boy version. And they did add additional buttons and everything, but I've always loved the feel, the design, and the weight of that. Let's get this open real quick. There it is, so cool. This is actually a 3.5-inch IPS LCD screen, 640 by 480 resolution, which is perfect for emulators and retro gaming. They did add A through Z button layout, so that way you could play like your Sega Genesis games a little easier. They did add a joystick here. I'm wondering if that's kind of gonna get in the way. I guess not. It's when I'm trying to remember of how I used to originally hold my Game Boy, and it's basically like this. You kind of feel it a little bit. And I know actually using it, it's not the most ergonomic thing in the world, but it is still a cool option. I believe it is removable too if that absolutely drives you nuts, so just keep that in mind. On the back here, what's cool is that they actually designed the back to look like it actually has an old school Game Boy cartridge in it. That's actually not what that is, it's just the design of the back plate. Alright, once we assemble the entire unit with the Raspberry Pi, you'll see that the ports actually pop out up here, and it'll even have a little power switch. And what's cool is that they actually included the original battery compartment design. Obviously, instead of using AA or AAAs, it's using a lithium polymer battery. What's also cool is that you have your shoulder buttons. So it gives you a couple more options, and they do have a couple different color options too. You can have the gray ones here, but they also have red ones that I'll show you in a minute, just to match the front-facing buttons there. I must say that everything feels very authentic and comfortable. Again, not super crazy about the analog stick. I'm glad they put it on there, especially if you're going to be testing this out with Dreamcast games. I'm primarily going to be playing older games than that. I'll definitely test out Dreamcast games at some point, so it is a cool option to have. On the bottom, you have your little volume slider. You have a headphone jack and a micro USB port. Kind of wish they went with Type-C. I know other models have like a dock that has like a Type-C connector. Not the end of the world. On the right-hand side here, you actually have an adjustment for the LCD screen, just like the original Game Boy models did, some of them at least. And on the left, if you have an HDMI adapter, which the Experimental Pi site does sell, it will pop out here. Otherwise, there is a faceplate to cover that up. So that's the case itself. Again, I love the weight and the authentic look of it. Really cool. Let's see what else is in the box here. Alright, you do have a carrying case. Down for a second, and you have your charging cable and power brick included there. It's cool that I included a case. I actually didn't know that. And in the other baggie, you have your tool set. Pop these open. So they did include a screwdriver for you, which is handy. These are the separate shoulder buttons that you can use. Again, these are the magenta ones that match the front buttons if you want to use those. I'm actually probably going to use these. And of course, you have your face plates for the Raspberry Pi, the HDMI port cover if you're not using the actual HDMI port itself, and the little power switch that goes on the top. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is actually disassemble it, show you what the inside is like. Now, the Experimental Pi site does have their own set of tutorials, so if I'm going too fast, I'll include those in the description too. Now, they actually shipped it without the screws in, so this should gently come right off. Alright, and again, the battery is back there and it has a little connector, and I'll show you how to hook that up later. Now, this is the actual LCD hat that has the fan module, so we want to actually unhook that first and then unscrew the 4 corner screws there. You'll also notice that these are the two buttons that the shoulder buttons on the back actually press in, but I'll show you how to replace those in a moment. So one thing you'll notice about this design is that they actually have a ribbon-style cable SD card adapter. This is what actually goes into the SD card slot on the Raspberry Pi itself, and that connects to the board, and what that allows you to do is to connect your actual RetroPie OS SD card into the side here, so you can slide it, pop it in and out rather, instead of having to disassemble the entire kit every time you want to upgrade it or what have you. So before we actually install the Pi, I'm just going to fold that back a little. I'm going to disconnect this fan connector here. And very gently, we're just going to fold back the module here, and that will allow us to install our Raspberry Pi. So I have my faceplate ready here. I'm going to do this very carefully here. It's a little tricky, but we're going to install the adapter first. You'll notice these 4 pins to actually know where to place the Raspberry Pi. Kind of did that a little backwards. We want to pop this on first, the faceplate. That way it slides right in. And you just want to make sure it looks flush on the top there. Okay. One thing I did not realize that you saw a minute ago, that I had a heatsink on top of the CPU that will not fit with the fan module, so you'll have to pop that off. Now we can connect the fan module. Make sure you line up the I/O pins there and just kind of carefully press down. Once that's good, we'll connect the fan connector again. We'll reconnect the ribbon cable on the side. Bam. So now we just have to put those screws back into the LCD/fan module, which I'll do here real quick. And those are back in. Make sure you don't over tighten the screws just until you feel a little bit of resistance. You don't want to warp the board or anything. Now, before we pop the back case back on, we want to connect the little power switch here. It's a little hard to see with the camera, but you'll notice that it has like a bit of a notch in it to kind of line up with the actual power switch. There we go. It'll feel a little loose just until we pop the back on, so just lay it down gently for now, and I'll replace those shoulder buttons. Shoulder buttons are straightforward, just 2 screws. Let's undo those real quick. And we will drop the magenta ones right in. And we'll screw those back in. There we go. Now the last step before we assemble it, I'm going to put the faceplate on for where the HDMI port goes. I'm not going to be using the HDMI adapter on this one, not until I get the newer Pi. Just slides in just like that. And now to gently assemble everything, make sure it all lines up nice and smoothly here. There we go. Go ahead and screw everything in. And we are assembled. I love this already. The weight alone is spot on compared to the original Game Boy. Everything seems pretty flush here. And yeah, I definitely prefer the magenta back buttons there, just to match the front. So now what we want to do is get the battery connected. As you can see, it's one of these standard 2-pin battery connectors for negative and positive. It can only go in one way, so don't worry, you won't screw it up. That tucks right in. Bam. And that is the PiBoy DMG. I'm going to go charge this real quick, then we'll come back and fire it up. Alright, we do have a bit of charge here. One thing I did forget to do is pop the SD card in. I'll go ahead and fire it up here. Hey, nice. Oh yeah, there we go. Loading the OS there. Now I should mention, keep in mind this isn't the original Game Boy where you can just pop it on and a game will start. This is a microcomputer running an operating system, so it will take a few minutes the first time it boots up just to go through the initial configuration and everything, so just be patient and let it do its thing.
6.5 hours later.
Alright, so long story short, I had to redo the entire thing. There's a bit of a glitch in the version of RetroPie that I was using on the Raspberry Pi 3. So you need to go back to version 4.7.1 if you're on a Raspberry Pi 3. No big deal. Kinda wish they put that up on the website. This might have been just a new occurrence or a new discovery they just made. So not the end of the world. So just have to go backwards and reflash everything. And hopefully we'll get back in business shortly here.
3 weeks later.
Alright, so very long story short, I couldn't get the Raspberry Pi 3 to work properly. There were way too many issues, and when I finally did get it to work with the PiBoy, certain games were just running horribly. Like anything more intensive than a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis ROM was just stuttering and yeah. Anyway, that's okay. I decided to just wait and put the video on hold until my Raspberry Pi 4 came in, which it finally did. So let's get this guy opened up and we'll just swap out the boards. Now, the only way I was able to even get a Raspberry Pi 4 was to get the entire kit from a can of kit. So obviously half this stuff isn't going to be put to use with this particular model since it's going right into the PiBoy, but it's cool to have for future projects. Just going to put all this stuff to the side for now, but just real quick to show you what it does include if you decide to get a kit yourself. Heat sinks, power supply, plastic case, nice little pretty sturdy shell. I actually have one on one of my prior Raspberry Pi units that's running as a DNS server. They included some HDMI cables. I believe this is just a hard on-off switch, USB-C. And they also include a fan module. Oh, 128 gig Samsung Evo SD. I might actually use that for my PiBoy image there. And some literature here, and they also included the SD card reader. So I actually had no clue that they included a 128 gig SD card. I thought it was just going to be a smaller one. So hey, awesome. And here is the PiBoy itself. As I totally demolished the box and trying to carefully take this guy out because I waited nearly a month for it. Okay. And don't worry, I am grounded. There's the Pi 4 there. Nifty. Hopefully better luck this time. We'll see. Again, I'm not going to go through the process in this video on how to flash the SD card. There's plenty of videos online, but there's tutorials right on Experimental Pi's website. And again, I'll put the links to that in the description. And I also won't bore you with reassembling the entire thing. So I'll pop the new Raspberry Pi in, wire everything up, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so back to my other workbench here. We are completely reassembled with the Pi 4. And I have the SD card in already preloaded with the Experimental Pi image. Now, I mentioned before that you're going to need the base RetroPie image and run a few scripts in order to make it work with the PiBoy. You don't need that if you're using Experimental Pi's image, which is built specifically for the Raspberry Pi 4. So, should be good there. Ignore basically the first half of my entire video. So, same as before. I don't know if this is necessary to have it hooked up to Ethernet, but I have my keyboard and network hooked up just in case. So let's fire this on and let's see what happens here. All right. Well, detected the keyboard. Looks like we got a boot screen there. I apologize. It's between the screen and the lighting. This isn't the best way to. All right. Oh look, we already got sound. Sweet. I should reboot a couple times, the tutorial did mention, so let's just be patient here. I'm also gonna plug in power just so it doesn't get low halfway through. Oh wow, okay. Well, hold on, let me plug in power real quick. I already loaded up into an emulation station, look at that. Oh, that is a cool new interface there. The GUI's been updated and everything. It's kind of got like that graffiti style font. Oh, I like that a lot. All right, awesome. Well, it looks like it started right up. Looks like buttons are already mapped too. Look at that. Yeah, long story short, just go with the Raspberry Pi 4 and use Experimental Pi's base image there. All right, so far so good. Everything's working great. It's on the main screen. The buttons are already mapped, so I don't even have to do that. While it's sitting here charging, I'm going to leave it connected to my network, and I'm going to go load up some ROMs. So I'm going to do that real quick, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so I loaded up some ROMs. I'm just restarting the unit real quick. I don't think that's necessary, but, you never know. Again, loading up ROMs is very simple. Hook it up to Wi-Fi or Ethernet. If you're using Windows, just open up a new Explorer window. Type in //RetroPie with an E, and you'll get access to the file system, including a ROMs folder. And what's nice is that they have folders already pre-created for you for each console. So you just dump your ROMs in and ready to go. Look at that. Already detected all my ROMs there. I should have enough juice now. I'm going to move back to my other workstation there and disconnect everything. Also, by default, the top banner that shows like the temperature gauge, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and all that, there is a way to disable that, which I would like to do eventually, but I'm going to keep it on just for the sake of this video. Let's test out some Nintendo 64 titles here. Let's do something really, oh, you know what? Let's do Perfect Dark. I know this is an intensive title, at least it was for the Nintendo 64, so let's see how the Raspberry Pi 4 handles it. Emulated expansion pack, I love it. Alright, a lot smoother than the Raspberry Pi 3, I can tell you that much. Awesome. Sound is a bit crackly, I'm just gonna... There we go. Maybe because I had it on max there, as you guys could probably tell. God, I love this game. Alright, a little stuttering there. Not horrible. Just made a new game. Let's go ahead and try this out. Little bit of stutter and lag when starting a new mission here. Not a big deal. I also noticed a couple of the buttons are mapped improperly. They're like A and C are flip-flopped. Not a big deal. I can fix that after. Alright, here we go. So, gotta use the joystick. I'm assuming Z is going to be to shoot. So, the way it's mapped now, it's going to be a little wonky, but the fact that it's running this smoothly is awesome, actually. So yeah, not going to play super long. Just want to give you an idea of how it runs, and you can tell that frame rate is amazing. Again, playing 3D titles like the 64 is going to be a little awkward, just given the button movement, but once I figure out a good mapping, I'll let you guys know. You can hit select start at the same time to actually cancel out of a ROM and go back to your menu here. So that's Nintendo 64, one of the most demanding games, already ran very smoothly. Let's check out a PlayStation title. Dragon Ball GT Final Bout. Can't go wrong there. Now if you do get this menu, just hit A. It'll automatically configure the emulator for you. Intro animation already very smooth. We'll go ahead and skip that, get right into the action here. Again, some of the buttons are a little backwards, I gotta fix that, but not the end of the world.
You look strong. This should be a good fight.
Oh, good times. To be fair, this game was pretty wonky to begin with, but at least you could get an idea. Oh my god, I'm doing terribly. But you can get an idea of frame rate, especially for a PS1 game. Well, that is Dragon Ball GT. I forget how wonky that game was. So, last but not least, let's fire up a Dreamcast ROM here. Let's hit A there, configure the emulator. Should automatically detect it. There we go, we're already launching. What a great RPG this was, by the way. There we go. We'll just show you the introduction. I won't play too much. Again, just to give you an idea of how well the hardware runs and how well emulation is going. I bet you anything, this could probably run GameCube or PS2 games. Granted, not very well on that low frame rate, but I'd be curious to try that out. Went ahead and skipped ahead just to give you an idea of the initial gameplay here. As you can see, it runs beautifully. Everything's loading very smoothly. Go ahead and play a little bit here. Yeah, buttons very responsive. The screen is beautiful. That's actually at max brightness too. You can even lower that too, save a little bit of battery life, or if you're in a dark room or whatever. Volume, like I said earlier, I did turn it down a little bit because it sounded like it was getting a little muffled. Yeah, so very happy with this so far, and I'm primarily going to be playing older games. I think I definitely want to rip through some of my Game Boy Advance collection, so I may not be playing a heck of a lot of, Dreamcast, N64 titles and stuff like that, especially just due to the ergonomics alone. Something like that I'd probably emulate on my PC, but the fact that this little guy can handle that so smoothly, and again, with the Raspberry Pi 4, not necessarily the 3, I just exited out back to the menu here, but yeah, very thrilled with this so far. Isn't running too warm either, so the fan's doing a great job. I was worried, I was just ripping through these 3D games, it was going to get a little hot, but it really isn't. So very pleased with it. I can't get over like the likeness to the original Game Boy. Just the feel, the weight, the buttons, the build, everything about this is just so... it's freaking awesome. I love it. So, you know, despite the mild frustrations with the Raspberry Pi 3 and having to just wait for the 4, totally worth it. Again, if you're going to go with this build, definitely go with the Raspberry Pi 4. It's a lot more stable. Everything's working very smoothly. I do have to remap some of the buttons with some of the emulators. Not the end of the world. I kind of figured I'd have to do that anyway. The fact that it automatically maps with any of them is frosting on the cake, I guess. But yeah, this is the experimental PiBoy DMG running the Raspberry Pi 4. Nifty device. Play all your ROMs from the Atari age all the way up to the Dreamcast. And I'd be very curious if this could run PS2 or GameCube titles at all. Again, not particularly well, but the fact that it could run them is pretty cool. Guys, as always, thanks so much for watching. This is the Young Highland Lad signing out. Test the power button here. Make sure it actually powers off when... Oh, look at that. Beautiful. So that is the PiBoy DMG. Thanks, guys, for watching. Maybe I'll release videos more than once a year. But anyway, we'll see you next year.